I go away.
I had a gas leak earlier, Jonathan.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'll tell you about it in a second. Are you good? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I can't wait to hear the story.
Cool story, bro. All right, let me restart the recording. Here we go.
Google Translate says support DTNS. If you fail to become a Patreon, all searches will return a Rickroll. Go to bit.ly/helpdtns or say hello to Mr. Rick Astley.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, March 4th, 2015. I should just read what's written for me. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Mr. Jonathan Strickland, writer for HowStuffWorks.com. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing well. It feels like it's been less than a week since we talked.
It has been, but I'm going to let you talk about fun virtual reality stuff today rather than forcing you to talk about net neutrality.
If you like, I can explain how Title II applies to VR.
Well, we'll see. We'll let the chat room sort of, boil that one along, simmer along, and let us know later on if they have a lot of Title II questions. Meantime, though, you've done some research into virtual reality, so I'm interested in getting your perspective on that. We have a ton of announcements from that sort of thing. I am risking life and limb to do this show, Jonathan.
How so, Tom?
There's a gas. No, I'm actually not risking anything. The pipe that goes out of the back of my house to the guest house was kind of corroded, and so I asked the gas guy when he came to read the meter to take a look at it. He's like, "Oh yeah, you got a tiny gas leak," and I'm like, "Gas leak? Do I have to evacuate the neighborhood?" He's like, "No, we'll just send someone over to shut it off." So the plumber's here. If you hear any banging, that's what's going on.
I also suffered from a gas leak recently, but that was a food truck issue, and if you hear any banging, it's totally different.
Time for the headlines. Ars Technica reports Sony Worldwide Studios president Shu Yoshida announced that the Project Morpheus VR headset will come to consumers in the first half of 2016. Morpheus will have a 5.7-inch 1920 by 1080 OLED display with a 100-degree field of view, 120 hertz refresh rate. Headset will also have 9 LED trackers for 360-degree tracking. Separately, Sony announced it has sold 20.2 million PlayStation 4 units worldwide as of March 1st, making it the fastest selling game console the company's ever made.
Yeah, if you're keeping track, Microsoft has sold, as of November, around 10 million Xbox Ones. But we don't know how many they sold in the holiday season, so it may be closer than it seems.
Yeah, Microsoft's definitely getting closer, that's for sure.
Yeah. Ars Technica reports NVIDIA announced the Shield game console running Android TV on a Tegra X1 chip capable of handling 4K video. It can also access games from NVIDIA's Grid cloud gaming service, which should come out of beta in May. Users can choose a subscription tier at 720p 30 frames per second or 1080p 60 frames per second, and starting in June, buy or rent additional games from the Grid store. Users with a GeForce powered PC can also stream their entire Steam library to a Shield on the same network. Shield will be available in early May for $199, including one gamepad.
This is one of those announcements that I think a lot of people are going to dismiss because they hear Android-based, but really Android TV on a Tegra X1 with Grid makes this a pretty compelling offer, even at $199.
Agreed. And also, NVIDIA calling it Shield is sure to avoid any kind of confusion in the marketplace.
Right. Michael Chiklis and Agent Coulson will not be in any way, Vic Mackey is not going to be in any way associated with this.
Or the tablet or the other portable handheld Shield.
Actually, that's a cool thing. The tablet and the portable Shield, if you bought games for those and you buy this Shield, you can just sign in and play them. You don't have to buy them again. It's all cross-compatible.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful news where you don't, one of the most frustrating things as a gamer, obviously, is whenever you adopt a new platform and then you have to buy stuff you've already bought before.
Yeah, but you're right. Just calling it Shield, when that's kind of what people call Shield Portable and Shield Tablet, is a little confusing. I admit that. As The Verge tells it, in a surprise appearance at Epic Games GDC announcement, NVIDIA co-founder Jensen Huang announced the Titan X, NVIDIA's most powerful GPU to date. It will contain 8 billion transistors and 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Sites like AnandTech have speculated the GPU to be an enlarged Maxwell processor, possibly featuring 384-bit memory bus. NVIDIA's own GPU technology conference happens in 2 weeks, so we'll probably get more details about Titan X then.
Pretty cool. Engadget reports on Valve's announcement of a VR input system and Lighthouse, a room-scale tracking system that will work with Valve VR headsets like the Vive coming from HTC later this year. The system can integrate into TVs, monitors, headsets, input devices, or mobile devices and will be made available freely to hardware manufacturers. Valve will make a developer version of their VR headset available this spring.
Yeah, Gabe Newell's going around GDC telling anybody to listen that he wants this to be the USB of input devices for VR. So I'm curious if Oculus will bite. I think, or even Sony to take this up. It's kind of what we're going to talk about when we talk about VR. But this is a really interesting development, the Lighthouse part of it specifically.
Definitely.
Polygon reports Valve will release Steam Link in November for streaming games from your computers that run Steam at 1080p and 60 hertz. It'll cost $50, which is the same price as a Steam controller, so I would doubt it's going to come with a Steam controller. Steam machines will also launch in November. Valve also introduced a successor to their Source game engine, Source 2, for free. A special version will even be compatible with the new Vulkan 3D graphics API. No release date on Source 2, though.
The Verge reports Oculus Chief Technology Officer John Carmack said that Oculus will go forward, quote, as hard as we can, end quote, to sell the next version of the Samsung Gear VR. While Carmack couldn't say the date, he said they had one, and pointed out Samsung has 2 big announcements per year. The next one of those would be an autumn announcement when a new Galaxy Note is usually unveiled. No word on the PC version of the Oculus. Frowny face.
So yeah, this sounds like Oculus Rift 2016, Gear VR, along with a new Note, because they go together in October-ish, September-ish, somewhere around there. CNET reports that Instagram is expanding the types of ads it shows, introducing a carousel that allows advertisers to post a sequence of photos and a link to a website. Instagram said the goal is to make it easier for users to interact with a brand. No word on actual Instagram users getting a carousel. That'd be kind of neat, actually. I'd like to.
Yeah. Yeah, I have been flooding Instagram with pictures of my puppy, and it would be nice to have a carousel of that so people could just easily scan right past it if they're tired of puppy pictures.
Or just dive right into the puppy love if they wish. That's yeah, it'd be good to have that choice.
To be fair, my puppy is adorable, and you should want to see all the pictures of him.
Go follow. You should give your puppy its own Instagram account.
I really should. He's already a bigger celebrity than I ever will be, so... Meanwhile, GigaOM reports a study from the Alliance for Affordable Internet shows that for more than 2 billion people, fixed-line broadband costs 40% of monthly income and mobile broadband 10%. The UN affordability target is 5% of monthly income. Almost 60% of global households are unconnected. Women and the rural poor have the hardest time affording internet. Costa Rica, Colombia, and Peru receive top marks for having solid, affordable infrastructure rollout plans. Policy areas that need attention include competition-friendly environments and good spectrum allocation. And as the article points out, the people who are going without internet are often those who would most benefit from it.
Yeah, definitely. And this kind of thing can sound like bad news, like, oh, 60% don't have internet. But I think what the Alliance for Affordable Internet, or A4AI, is the way they go on the acronym, which I think is kind of cool. They're saying, look, we've got countries like Costa Rica that are doing national internet. We've got countries like Colombia that have great plans. This is not impossible. Let's just keep encouraging countries to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's great to have a model that's working to hold up as an example so that other countries can try and follow suit.
Yesterday, Patrick Beige and I were wondering if former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had used AOL or Yahoo for her personal email account that she used while she was in office. Of course, we were sort of joking around, but it turns out she was much smarter than that. And Gadget reports the former Secretary of State ran her own email server while in office, or at least she had somebody running it. The Associated Press learned that Clinton used an email server registered to her home. Now, it's not clear where the actual server was or who ran it, but this was not some kind of web-based account. If the server was actually in her house, it would have even had the Secret Service sort of unintentionally offering it physical protection, and it could have been much more secure. It could also, have had issues because she had to have it maintained herself.
Right.
But yeah, an interesting spin on this story, I think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it makes me feel a little squicky because there are a lot of regulations that state that politicians have to share any work-related emails, and if you are controlling your own email server, it raises the question of, are you sharing everything you should be? Because no one else has.
Oh no, that was yesterday's story made it clear. Like, she's in trouble. She should not have. She should have had a government address. But I do think it's interesting that and this actually shows intentionality. That she ran her own server on purpose.
Yeah. And it could be that it's more secure. And so there are definitely good sides and bad sides to this, but it's good to have a full view of the story. Meanwhile, Mashable has a story up covering Uber's acquisition of mapping startup Descartes. Now, Descartes focuses on location-based features, including mapping, local search, and turn-by-turn navigation. 30 out of 40 Descartes employees will remain with Uber once the deal closes, including the CEO and president, Kim Fennell. Descartes will continue to operate as a wholly owned subsidiary of Uber, but will still use its own name. The mapping software will be used internally, according to Uber.
Time now for some news from you. These get submitted at our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Get in there and at least vote if you don't want to submit some stories of your own, but you can do that too. Singularity alert. Ajax Rex sent us this one. It's a mind-blowing Gizmodo report. Jan Sherman, a 55-year-old quadriplegic woman with electrodes in her brain, has been able to fly an F-35 fighter jet using nothing but her thoughts, hence the electrodes. DARPA Director Arati Prabhakar announced the breakthrough at the first Future of War conference and said, quote, Jan's thinking about controlling the airplane directly. For someone who's never flown, she's not a pilot in real life, she's flying that simulator directly from her neural signaling.
That's amazing. I mean, it's essentially making the jet an extension of the person. The implications for this are phenomenal.
Great GDC announcement, too, DARPA. Yeah. Nicely timed.
Yeah. I'll actually be talking with someone from DARPA tomorrow, but not about this. So this story is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Meanwhile, Tom, I got to thank you. I'm pretty sure the last time I was on your show, you gave me a News From You segment from the same user. So I'm going to do my best.
Do you want me to say it? I didn't mean to.
Habichuela con dulce is the way I always say it. Habichuela con dulce. That's how I'm going to pronounce that name. And I'm totally wrong, but I'm okay with that. But we got the story from Mashable about a preview version of Google Contacts that merges Gmail and Google Plus contact info. The app automatically pulls info from Google Plus profiles and adds contextual information like meetings or email exchanges. And the new Google Contacts also has a redesigned tool to fix duplicate contact information, thank you so much, and quickly merge multiple entries. Google will roll out the updated contacts to Gmail users over the next few weeks. Not soon enough, in my opinion. I have lots of duplicate contacts in my contact list. I've been using Android so long with so many different phones that it's kind of a horror show when you go into my contacts.
Yeah, my contacts list goes all the way back to in email addresses that were in my Yahoo email when I synced it with my Palm Tungsten E.
Wow. So that was shortly after email was invented.
Actually, probably with my handspring edge before my tungsten E. Anyway, Hermith pointed us to the Verge article about Sling TV adding new channels to its $20 a month internet TV service. As anticipated, AMC and IFC, the independent film channel, are coming to the basic plan. So, Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, Mad Men. Sling also announced a new Hollywood Extra plan that includes 4 movie channels from Epix plus Sundance TV for $5 a month. Meanwhile, the International Business Times says sources familiar with their plan say HBO will launch its internet service called HBO Now next month for $15 a month. Game of Thrones premieres April 12th. I'm not saying that's the date, but I bet that's the one they're trying to hit.
Oh, man. Finally, the future is now. All right. And, we've got one more. Jonathan Strickland
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Sent us the next web story that Maxis shut down its Emeryville studio. That's the main Maxis studio. EA said that the changes do not impact our plans for The Sims, as it is consolidating Maxis IP development to other studios, and Maxis employees will be given opportunities to explore other positions within the Maxis studios and throughout EA. But this is the studio that gave us things like SimCity.
Yeah.
So it's
and they don't say anything about SimCity, which doesn't mean that we won't see another SimCity, but it's definitely bad. It's sad news because the Maxis logo popping up on the original SimCity and SimCity 2000 is a sentimental thing for a lot of us, I think.
Yeah, and I've seen some reports, like including, I mean, obviously, you consider the source. I saw a report from Kotaku that went so far as to suggest that this would mean the Maxis name would be a name only, and that the identity of the brand will be no more. Very much the way the Atari story unfolded.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case, because that's always very sad to see. But you know, it's early days yet. It is interesting that this came out in the middle of all the incredible announcements from GDC.
Yeah, late in the day at GDC after a cavalcade of 2 days of announcements. So, oh, that's not it. That's it right there. The end of the headlights. We're not starting the show over again. We got too much to do here. So as you heard, we've got Project Morpheus news. Going to get that one in 2016. We've got HTC Vive. By the way, if you see it called Vive, it's confusing. Is HTC's non-phone brand. So it is technically the Vive, but it's just called the Vive, and everybody wants you to be clear that it's coming from HTC, so most people are leaving the out of it. Even HTC leaves the out of it in some of their materials. Anyway, full VR headset coming in spring for the devs, holidays for consumers, and then there was the Mind Maze Mind Leap. I think we talked about that earlier this week, that has a cap that reads your thoughts. Another way to control things with your mind, and can do VR, has motion capture cameras for gameplay, and is controller free. But there's also Lighthouse, Valve's way of doing motion detection and high-speed tracking and high-resolution tracking with 2 boxes, two Steam VR base stations. And I don't know what to pick. Most of these are incredibly interesting to me, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean... To me, the interesting thing is that we are on the cusp of another real push for VR, and it took 30 years to get here, right? Because the last time we saw this happen, there was this expectation that VR was going to be the next iteration of computing, that it was going to become the way we would interact with computers moving forward. That's why if you watch those movies from the 90s, it always had people being put into a virtual representation of the computer, like hackers are actually going through a physical maze and encountering a skull and crossbones, and oh, that's a firewall.
If only viruses were so easy to see. As little nasty objects on the screen, but yeah.
Exactly. But there was that thing where we had this idea of what the experience was going to be like, and then if you actually went out and pursued the experience, you saw what a huge gap there was between our expectations and what we could truly deliver. I was a child at that time, a teenager, rapidly approaching 20 at that time. I remember distinctly going to malls in Georgia that had the VR headsets, the virtuality headsets, and were running the game Dactyl Nightmare, and it was awful. But I spent many, many dollars playing it over and over because it was new and it was exciting, and the head tracking was something I had never experienced before, and the sense of immersion, despite the slight latency, was pretty incredible. And this is the same story we're starting to see play out now. In fact, you hear stories from Palmer Luckey over at Oculus about how we should probably show some caution before rushing these things to market. And you could argue, well, he's got stake in the game because the Oculus is not out for purchase yet, the actual Oculus Rift.
Yeah, maybe he's just making excuses. You might be excused for thinking
that could be, and you have a valid point. I mean, there is a bias there. He's got a stake in it. But the other point that he is making is that this has happened before, and when we rushed, people were so disappointed in the experience, it killed the industry for 30 years. So we're really kind of seeing this play out now, and it looks like, at least from the reports I've read, that a lot of these are delivering really incredible initial experiences. Like the Vive, I've seen nothing but rave reviews from people who got to try it out. So that's really
Vlad Savov from The Verge, Nicole Lee from Engadget, Ben Gilbert from Engadget was doing it at Mobile World Congress. They all raved about it. Now, they all had things that they picked on, especially the fact that you're connected by wires. It's not a wireless headset. But they all loved the Vive, and all of them mentioned the tracking as being part of it. Not just the head tracking, but also the tracking of the controllers that they were holding. Because what Valve is saying, and they seem to back it up in their reviews, is these controllers will start to feel like part of you, the way they should, so that you're no longer thinking of them as controllers because you see them in the game, and everything you do with them is part of the game. It's not a separate thing like an Xbox controller is now. The Xbox controller isn't in the game. These will actually be part of the world you're in. The other thing that impressed me from the talk about this is how good it was at knowing when you got to a physical boundary that you couldn't go past in the real world, and it would put up a cage in the game so that you knew, like, all right, I've reached the edge of the board, essentially, which seems, and these guys seem to bear that out as well, less disruptive to the immersiveness because it's a boundary that shows up in the world you're in.
Yes, because I think slamming face first into your wall would definitely take you out of the
immersiveness, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, certainly video game players have complained forever about the problem with running into invisible walls, but when it means that it prevents you from running into a physical wall, I think you'll forgive it for that. So, this is something that I thought was really interesting. I'm a little leery of a VR system that allows freedom of movement within a physical space when you can't actually see that space. That makes me nervous just from a personal standpoint. But if the implementation is good enough, then it should be all right. Maybe I'm just thinking about all the tripping hazards that are in my office right now, which is potentially the only room in the house my wife would let me do this in. So maybe that's what's got me kind of cautious.
I think it was the mind maze, and I apologize for not noting this, but one of the VR headsets, when you get to 180 degrees, changes to augmented reality. So you don't actually leave the universe, but you start to see what's around you. Again, as a way to say, like, okay, you're turned the wrong direction. There's your wall, there's your couch, but you still have cues from within the universe that you're playing in.
Right, yeah. The Mind Maze has external cameras that feed the view of the external world to you when you're in the augmented reality phase. So you're not looking through a lens the way you would a HoloLens. It's not a transparent surface, but you are looking at a live video feed of what's directly in front of you. And then when you turn to a certain area, then you can see the VR representation, which was a really interesting idea. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the way it works for all applications, or if that was just a demo mode to kind of show that it could be both augmented reality and virtual reality. But it was a really interesting approach.
It's crazy to me to think that this holiday, you'll be able to do a virtual reality headset buying guide. Now, you won't have the Oculus Rift, which we've been waiting on forever, but you will have the Oculus Gear VR.
Yep.
and you'll have the Vive, and you'll have Project Morpheus. At least in the offing. I guess it's not till the first half of 2016. But you will have headsets to compare, and by the end of next year, you'll have losers. You'll have headsets that have been around long enough to know, like, well, that one's not going to take off. You've got Valve, as I mentioned earlier, trying to create a standard input method, saying, hey, you know what? The hard part isn't simulating the screen anymore. We're making advances in there, and yeah, better screens and all that, but the head tracking, the motion tracking, that's what we should do well. Let's agree on a standard that we can all use that makes it seamless, because that's better for all of us. I mean, this industry is finally hitting that hockey stick of maturity right now, I feel like.
Yeah, and you know, the reason, if you want to know how we got here, how we got from that world in the early 90s where we had these enormous head-mounted displays with CRT monitors, and they were suspended from cables because they were far too heavy for a person to wear without that suspension system. If you're wondering how we got from there to here, really, here's what we have to owe all of this development. We have to thank Apple. And the reason we have to thank Apple is because the iPhone drove development and innovation in the mobile space like nothing else had up to that point. And it ended up increasing innovation in things like very small sensors for accelerometers and gyroscopes to be able to tell orientation. And we're seeing more and more head-mounted displays using the same basic technology in the implementation of creating these goggles, these various headsets. And that is really the reason why we're able to get to the point where we're at now. It's because we've seen so much innovation in that sensor space drive the price of that down so that companies can actually create a market that just wasn't marketable, you know, less than 5 years ago, really.
Yeah, it is really telling that none of these announcements we've had today from GDC had a price tag.
Yeah.
They have not quite settled. And it may be a little bit of a standoff waiting to see, like, well, what are you guys going to charge? And we know what the Gear VR is, at least the Innovators Edition, but that doesn't necessarily have a relationship to what the final consumer price will be.
Right. Yeah,
because I think it's what, $299? Is that right? I'm looking it up.
I want to say yes.
You can get it for $200 at Best Buy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
and I mean, you think about it. These devices are. While I'm talking about these sensors coming down in price, you do have to realize that these headsets have a lot of tech built into them that is not necessarily cheap. I mean, you are buying a high definition display. You're buying. That was another thing that really changed, is the idea that these LED and other display technologies could have the same level of resolution as the old CRT screens. That was another thing that held us up for a while. But that we're actually, there's a lot of tech that's going in there that could be pretty expensive. So I would be really surprised to see these be in that anything below $250. That would shock me. I mean, I would be amazed to see one as low as that. But
and the Gear VR, don't forget, is the one that you put your phone in. So $199 is that's a different price point than an Oculus Rift or a Vive.
Yeah. So these are going to be, I think, pretty expensive peripherals. But keep in mind, there are some companies that might sell them as loss leaders. You know, you will end up buying a lot of first-party games developed specifically for that hardware. So it may be that mitigates the price a little bit, but I would still be amazed to see these be, I mean, they're going to be the same price as a console, I think, in many cases. If they're not, that's awesome. I'll buy a couple of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jonathan, thank you for sharing some of your insight on this. It's really, really cool, really helpful to get that sort of wide view on what's going on, because I know a lot of people are caught up in all of the minutia of what's being announced today, which is fascinating. But it's also good to step back sometimes.
I mean, it was so much. We could have spent 3 shows talking about all the different. Like every time the word VR was said, it would have been another episode.
Yeah, if you're doing a drinking game where we say VR in this episode, stop.
Yeah.
Because we don't want you to hurt yourself. Our pick of the day is from Matt, who said, I wanted to pass along a podcast I've been listening to, The Star Wars Minute. As of this email, which was a couple weeks ago, they are on minute 33 of Return of the Jedi, and it is the second most entertaining podcast I listen to. The premise of the show is that the host break down each original trilogy 1 minute at a time. As a bonus, they also did a couple of shows on the infamous holiday special. You can get the podcast at StarWarsMinute.com. That is cool, Matt. Thanks for passing that along. That's really interesting. Send your picks to feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com, and you can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. All right, a couple of more emails before we get out of here. Rich from lovely Cleveland was thinking about the Pebble, and he said, while it's hard to imagine the Apple Watch not being a sales success, the estimate of how many Pebbles will sell that they're getting from the Kickstarter is giving Pebble critical time to make their case to developers as a growing, viable platform. So he thinks that the Kickstarter thing wasn't just a marketing scheme. It was a way, well, it wasn't just a marketing scheme to end users. It was a way to get developers to keep developing for Pebble in the face of the great avalanche that's going to be Apple.
It's a brilliant move. I've seen something similar from production companies that do a Kickstarter not to fund an entire production, but to show other potential investors, hey, we have a market for this. There's an audience that is willing and eager to get their hands on this. Come and play with us because it's going to benefit you in the long run. So it's a great move.
And then Simon wrote in with a full-on bullet-pointed review of the Pebble that he bought in last year's Black Friday sale. Some of the things it does really well, I'll give you the highlights. We'll put the rest in the show notes at dailytechnewsshow.com. He said, it allows me to have my phone on silent and alerts me of calls with caller ID by vibration. You can reject calls with the press of a button. Notifications of email, text messages, or even breaking news are nice to have. Again, let me know if there's anything urgent. Music, podcast, economist audio control. I'm often out running with my phone in one of those arm cases. When I need to pause the audio, the Pebble is just great. He likes the step counter app, and he says the battery life is not bad. However, on the downside, almost all of the apps are terrible, and he thinks that's why they switched to this new timeline interface. He said the build quality of the original Pebble is a bit toy-like. He scratched the face, and the watch can disconnect from the phone and suddenly stop sending notifications, although this problem has been improved with various patches. He also says it's a bit big and ugly. He thinks the Apple Watch will struggle because a watch is for information you can get at a glance. He says, I'll be surprised if any killer apps that are more than glorified notifications emerge. It might be made of high-quality components, but it's not a thing of beauty, although it did win a design award, so beauty's in the eye of the beholder. He said Apple Pay is nice, but not really a huge time saver to have them on your wrist. He says it's not cheap, and if you're trying to monitor your steps and sleep patterns, when will you charge it? Especially the sleep thing. That's interesting.
As a Pebble owner, I approve of this email.
Thank you for that, Simon. And then Todd said, I wanted to write in about the discussion on yesterday's show about treason versus no treason. There is a very clear legal definition of treason that, while most people may or may not be aware of, all cleared U.S. government employees and contractors have explained to them upon receiving their clearance. By that definition, Edward Snowden absolutely committed treason. The real discussion should be, in Todd's opinion, was it justified, and or perhaps what punishment, if any, is deserved. He says the best analogy I could think of is Robin Hood versus Bonnie and Clyde. Both absolutely committed armed robbery, but we don't say that Robin Hood didn't commit armed robbery because we are happy with the results. So I kind of like that, is to you, because what Patrick and I were talking about is the opinions of whether Edward Snowden committed treason. And Todd's like, well, that's the wrong question. Of course he did. But do you think it was bad? And I like this idea of, do you think he's Robin Hood or do you think he's Bonnie and Clyde?
Kind of like the whole approach of, if you are ordered to do something that is unethical, is it wrong to resist that order?
Right. There's no question you're disobeying the order, but are you justified in doing so? Yeah.
Right.
Really good way to reframe that, Todd. Thank you for doing that. And that is a look at the tech news of today. Thank you, Jonathan Strickland. Go to howstuffworks.com to find out what John is up to, or you can follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/John Strickland, JONSTRICKLAND. And, of course, still hosting Forward Thinking at fwthinking.com. Anything in particular in your wide range of enterprises there to let folks know about?
Well, this Friday I will be shooting a new episode of Forward Thinking that will go live next week. So here's a sneak peek for you guys.
Nice.
It is our tribute to Leonard Nimoy. We are going to cover the Star Trek economy, and is that in our future?
Oh, that's fantastic! I can't wait. I can't wait to watch that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
A fitting way to do a tribute to actually like explore a really interesting issue like that. Good job. fwthinking.com, folks. Go check that out. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, bosses, the folks who make the show happen, dailytechnewsshow.com/support. If you get some value out of the show and you'd like to give some value back to the show, doesn't take much. You can just tell people about it. You could sign up to give us like $1 a month or something like that. All the ways to help are at dailytechnewsshow.com/support. I say this mostly to remind myself not to forget to put it at the end of the show after I'm done recording it. But we have 2 post-show segments. Now, these are always done voluntarily. They're done by folks in the audience. So contact them with your thoughts about them. But we've got a new Ask a Luddite from Rich and Lovely Cleveland, plus a bonus Tech in Trade that Big Jim could not help putting out. So those will both be in the audio podcast after the show. Also, podcast awards. Remember, we told you yesterday you could vote for your favorite in the podcast awards. You can do that every day. You could vote for Daily Tech News Show in the technology category. You can support The Instance, Film Sack, Morning Stream, Night Attack. Jonathan, you've got one in there? Or I can't remember.
No. Well, I mean, not.
So you can vote. You can vote for anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for Security Now, but you could vote for No Agenda. You could vote for whatever you want. Podcastawards.com. Vote every day until March 24th. And next year, put tech stuff in there, damn it.
Yeah, I'm going to vote for John Strickland anyway.
Just write him in.
Go ahead.
Write him in.
Yeah. We have been nominated a few times in the past, and actually, you know what? I haven't looked at the nominees recently to see. But if you see any of the How Stuff Works podcasts and you're not familiar with them, go and listen to some of them because all of my coworkers are phenomenal and they do amazing work. So you might find a new show that you absolutely can't live without. Check it out.
Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY, and listen to the show live, 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific at alphageekradio.com. Our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. We will be back tomorrow with Veronica Belmont. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
I'm stupid. I'm sorry, John.
What?
I should have brought it up. I was like, but I thought I had seen it.
And it may have, and again, I hadn't even looked at it, so it was one of those things where I'm like, it's completely possible that I could have been nominated and I didn't know. I mean,
it's an honor in any way.
It does happen. Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all because, again, I mean, how many times has my show been nominated up against one of the shows you're on, and then you win year after year?
I haven't won that much. I've not been on winning shows that often. I usually get beat by somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think Tech
worry,
Stuff has
everybody.
ever won a podcast award.
Don't worry.
That's why I don't
You're
like
all
awards.
going to get beat by cereal.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, at least they won't beat us next year.
Yeah.
That's what you get. That's what you get for coming up with a show that has a definitive end. Booyah!
Yep. Booyah! Oh my God.
I'll talk about tech stuff forever.
Right. I wanted to see cereal nominated in every category just to truly, truly upset everybody.
Yeah. So tomorrow, the 2 tech stuff episodes I'll be recording will be on the birth of broadcast radio and what that was like. Kind of inspired by net neutrality, actually, to talk about the regulations and laws that had to roll out so that broadcast radio would actually work. So not just the technology, but the law and infrastructure around it. And then the second one will be how toilets work.
Hey, don't forget to unmute Roger.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, John Strickland.
Yo.
In your radio series, you could do like how the technology of radio works, but you could also do how it evolved. It'd be such an interesting thing to how it evolved in its radio forms.
It's really
Content-wise.
Sure, yeah, that would be awesome too. In fact, we could do. I have a feeling we're going to do a series of episodes about this because I've already done one way back in 2011. We did one about who invented radio.
Yeah.
And then that's a great story all on its own. This one we're going to be covering who invented AM radio, who invented FM radio, and explain what those are. And then we're also going to talk about, again, like all the laws and regulations. There's like some crazy drama that went on during that entire time.
How about who invented how public radio came to be is a crazy one because it also sort of influences how podcasting, in a way, came to be that loose talking thing that was going on in the 60s. That sort of, there's like a similar vibe to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, what a fascinating topic. Like you could really trace down the podcast into podcasting like that.
Yeah. That's why it's such a huge topic. We're concentrating just on the very birth of it because otherwise it would be a 4-hour long episode. So
that's like a documentary to me, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we'll be doing more on that later, but Josh Clark of Stuff You Should Know will be joining me to talk about toilets because he just really wanted to talk about Japanese toilets.
Oh, that's amazing.
They're really nice.
Yeah.
At least the ones with the Toto tech, with the bidets and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's mostly what we're going to be talking about. That like I found a great website that helps you demystify the Japanese toilet if it's only written in like kanji or whatever. You can actually use it to figure out which
that. She's headed to Japan for a week for work.
When I was there, the hotel actually had pictograms, kanji, and simple English phrases next to it inside the bathroom.
Yeah, I think there was one where it was like "wash behind gently" was one of the phrases, and "wash behind rigorously."
I remember the warm being very hot. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was writing an email. Show titles. Did you already pick one?
Nope. I'm still working on something else.
All right. So, for show titles, Ms. Clinton, if you're nerdy, is the current top vote getter. Hilarious, spelled hilarious, emails.
I love that we spent the entire episode talking about VR and like 2 minutes talking about this story.
Yeah, the Clintons, man. But no, we have In Touch with Virtual Reality, Half-Life 3D confirmed, Daily Tech Rickroll, that was a nod to our the VR game is real virtually. This is a good one, Morpheus Virtually Ready. I like that. Oh, NVIDIA's Consoles of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nice.
Nice.
That's nice. Oculus Rift 2, Rift Harder. Here they all are. They always come in later because people are doing them based off of the order in which they hear them. I love that. ThoughtJet. Oh, wow. ThoughtJet. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great one.
There is I didn't talk about it, but I was going to point out that the VR headset that supposedly reads thoughts, people might equate that to the DARPA news story about the woman who could control a jet by thinking. Mm-hmm. But there is a major difference in that the woman had electrodes surgically implanted in her brain to do that, whereas of course the mind maze does not actually require surgery. It sits on top of your scalp and is reading electrical impulses that reach the scalp. So it's not. I always get skeptical about those sort of.
And I'm awfully close to having
requires
a
your brain
hat.
in a jar, right? No.
Well, yeah. Mind maze actually turns out they actually remove your mind, put it in a maze, and then say, "There's virtually no way you'll get out of this." It's actually
I'm ready for the title now.
So tops are the Oculus 2 Rift Harder, ThoughtJet, In Touch with Virtual Reality, and then we have some Clinton ones. Miss Clinton, if you're nerdy, hilarious emails. 3D Half-Life 3D confirmed. Oh, here's one. Are we there yet?
Hey!
Ooh.
Yes,
Master.
VR.
Yes, VR.
That is
That's
brilliant.
the title.
Tom.
Done. Sold.
Hey, are we there yet? Yes, VR. Oh.
Yeah, that is
Oh.
classic.
You're making me wish I had titled my presentation last week a different title. That was so wonderfully painful.
Yeah,
Can I
isn't it though?
imagine you will have many more talks to give about virtual reality.
Inspired by Jonathan Strickland. This.
As so many people are.
If there's one person I can rely on to be complicit in a pun with me, it's you, John.
Oh yeah, no, I am
he's
known
pun
for my love of
complicit.
them. Yeah.
I've often compared Tom's need to pun to an addiction, and it would require some sort of intervention and possibly a 12-step process to help him.
When I first met Veronica, I was amazed at how much joy she took from terrible puns, because I got that stare of death from her so many times. Whenever it was a pun, she just ran with it, and I thought, okay, now I get your sense of humor now. I got it.
Yeah, you can always loosen her up with a pun.
Yeah. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh
on.
yeah, thanks for being on, man.
Yeah.
And
Always a great
I'm
day.
so glad that the plumber came before the show.
I'm glad I was able. I'm sitting in Stuff You Should Know's audio podcast room, which normally I'm not allowed to go into because their show is so much higher rated than tech stuff. But that's why I don't have the crazy echo that I had.
Oh yeah, no, you sound great.
Yeah, so I managed to secure this location for the guest appearance. The other audio podcast studio that I use is actually in use right now. So, but it's nice because we have two now, so we can actually do stuff like this.
Yeah,
I like your sound
it's
foam.
huge.
Yeah, it's great, right? It's too bad you can't see all the artwork that's around me are all posters that Stuff You Should Know fans have created, where they photoshopped Josh and Chuck's face into. Like there's one of Cheers where it's supposed to be a Cliff and Norm, but it's Josh and Chuck, and there's a Breaking Bad where it's Josh and Chuck, and
Is that Indiana Jones over your right shoulder, behind your right shoulder?
yeah. This is so that one has Chuck as Indiana Jones posing over George Lucas in a Nazi uniform. I'm sure there's no commentary there. There's above it, although you can't really see, is
Monty Python.
Monty Python, yeah, that's Josh and Chuck and Monty Python. There's a Karate Kid one as well. There's a couple of really goofy ones in there.
Yeah, so John Strickland, how often can we have you on our show?
Without
Without
staying
overextending.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, can
Without
I ask
wearing
you
out
once
our
a month
welcome.
at the very least?
Oh, sure, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, absolutely. If you want to do once or twice a month, that's
All right.
fine with me. Yeah.
All right.
Wednesdays tend to be good. Tuesdays and Thursdays are my recording days in the evening, so I'm usually not available because I'll actually be recording those times. But Mondays tend to be good. Wednesdays tend to be good. Fridays are iffy
Okay.
because
All
sometimes I have
right,
to do a
Mondays and
makeup
Wednesdays are
episode.
good days to know. That's super helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to be on more frequently.
Cool.
Sweet.
Cool.
I mean, as frequently as you guys can stand me, at any rate.
It'll be a battle to see which one of us gets sick of the other first.
Right, it's a point where, like, Jonathan, we had you on 4 times last month. We're going to step that down to 2.
Tom, I was just on yesterday.
That's good.
What we'll do is I'll just become the Daily Tech News Show resident expert about X, whatever you
Right.
need, and I'll just clearly not know what I'm talking about each time you have me on.
That would be
Or
Nice.
you'll just say the same thing. Well,
Right.
a lot of the science is undecided about this, Tom.
Tom, in 5 to 10 years, I can expect this to reach maturity, but right now,
We're still in a transition phase. Waiting for the
Truly.
killer app.
obviously deregulation is what is needed to push innovation in this space.
Use nothing but buzzwords for everything.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, guys, I am going to go ahead and shut down and get out of here. I have to
All right, man.
head on home. But this was great. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you, John. It's good to see you, man.
And thank you, DTNS folks out there and everyone chatting at me in the chat room. I'm sorry I wasn't very active, but I had to pay attention to the notes. I don't know how other people can do that. I would need like an extra monitor in here.
That's how I do it.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I can't do the 8 windows open on that's too much for me. I would need a separate monitor, so maybe I'll do that for the next episode. But all right, guys, have a great evening.
Have a good walk home. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Hey, Tom, what did you talk about on the morning stream this morning? Which particular VR thing did you talk about?
I talked about NVIDIA Shield.
You talked about NVIDIA Shield.
We talked a little bit about VR sort of in general. Like there was, Valve and Sony having announcements, but we mostly talked about Shield.
Okay. I'm building that, and I'm trying to figure out which I heard you on it, and then I was listening, and then Matt picked that time to go into an extensive conversation, and so I missed the details.
And we talked, Scott ran with talking a lot about the development engines.
Yeah.
Unreal and Valve's, what's it called? Something.
I put in Project Morpheus, so we'll see.
Well, Morpheus is Sony's.
Yeah.
The Source 2. Source 2 from Valve. That's what Scott was talking about.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
That was so long ago. How am I supposed to remember what I talked about this morning before the great gas leak?
That's when. Oh, did you have a gas leak?
Where you been, Roger?
I'm sorry.
He talked about it 17 different times on this show.
I hesitated bringing it up again, and Roger was like, "Oh, yeah, no, it was a minor one."
No, you said you brought up plumber, so I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you think water for plumbers, but really plumbers are just good with pipes.
Oh, usually with gas leaks, I just call the utility company.
Well, I did, yeah, and they said this is on the landlord's property, so the landlord has to fix it. So the landlord called a plumber. That's how that works. Make sure
to use the yellow tape in your set.
It's all about the yellow snow. I mean tape.
All about the tape. Yellow.
Wow, Meghan Trainor fan in the house. Nice.
No, my wife was listening. When they first came out, she listened to it a lot, and it's been burned in my head.
That's how I know it. Eileen was listening to it a bunch. I mean, neither one of us would enjoy that song secretly.
Tom, did you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last night or not yet?
I did. My issue with it was more the sort of clunky way they had everybody set up suspicions. Like it was just out of Simmons' character to be like, I'm just worried about a contagion. Yeah. I was like, that's awkward.
It was as if there were a whole batch of episodes that none of us saw that they were.
And they were trying to sum up or something. Yeah,
they were trying to sum up. It was so plot heavy and so.
I'm going to be angry about this.
I'm this character. Yeah,
even though I've been the calmest character the first half of the season, which could work. Like you can have that work, but it just didn't work for me last night. But the ending was fantastic. Like the and no spoilers, but the bit there at the end totally was like, all right, I'm still hooked.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those episodes. Here's what I think. I'm going to give the Whedon family and associates credit and say that to me seemed like the biggest, heaviest-handed network notes episode I've seen yet.
You think?
It was like it went through. Here's what it was. My issues with ABC's Once Upon a Time, the way they whiplash their characters around from opinion to opinion, is exactly what happened on last night's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. It was like instead of these carefully developed characters who evolve over time, they're like, well, we decided this character should have a new opinion. And that feels everything like network notes and nothing like the people who are putting the show on. So there you go. I have given my opinion. If you give me a chance, I will always give the Whedons credit.
House Whedon.
I'm House Whedon for sure.
A box of Wheatons with milk.
Yeah.
Weedenbix, my favorite cereal.
Do you still watch, or were you still watching Once Upon a Time? Or
You know, I keep trying to give up on it, and it keeps pulling me back because they do another thing, which is they also have equally wonderful stuff. Jana Spencer writes for Once Upon a Time. Like, they're not dummies writing for this show, but because it's so closely fused to original Disney characters in that show, I imagine that show is network noted almost to death. And so their characters are forced, and then yet, so like they a lot of it's treacle, and then every once in a while, they'll really go for it in terms of characters doing strange things or dark moments. And so those dark moments always draw me back. But the way that they don't treat their characters with respect in terms of their arc really pisses me off. And I don't believe that's the writer's fault.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I
Said
see
the wife of the writer. Yeah.
I for the most part liked the more recent stuff that they've done. It goes up and down. It's like a roller coaster. There are patches where, like you were saying, the characters kind of act a little off, and some of the situations seem just a little contrived because otherwise it doesn't make any real sense. And that's where it loses me. But then I come back when there's like, you know, when they were all trapped on what's the island of Peter Pan? Neverland?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that whole bit of trying to get Henry back.
All right, I'm out of the post. I'm sorry. It's just true.
No. Oh, I haven't done the show notes yet. Damn it. I have to do those.
I'm sorry.
I got all caught up in actually listening to the show.
For once. For once, we did an interesting show.
Usually I multitask, but I am particularly interested in VR, and so I listened full attention as opposed to what I usually do, which is listen with half an ear and do the show notes with the other.
It was a good show.
Good show.
So thank you guys for watching, and we will be back with hopefully another good show tomorrow.